Then I put in 1 year of my life, not learning a simple manner, just with that, dream that, it will take place. And God was kind. He made it happen and had a fantastic life also. Contractor actually watched me locate a flower from higher up in the mountains. I would dissected the flower. I saw that there are like 5 or 6 different shapes of petals in one flower. We took that and made them into enlarged models or pieces of each special and walk it with the reception of the entire backdrop are the petals of the Brahma Kamal.
Welcome to InDesign Dialogue with TOSTEM, a series where we sit with architects who are quietly shaping the physical world we live in. Today, we are with a man who just doesn't design space, but the experiences, the sensory experiences. He was the master planner of the 10,000-acre Aamby Valley project when he was just 26 years old. He is the man who has redefined luxury across the globe, from the private jet terminal in St. Kitts to Marriott in Jaipur, to lots of Taj and lots of lemon trees, all included. In fact, if you've ever visited any high-end hotel in India, looked around and thought, I never want to leave this place, then you've definitely interacted with some of his work. Today, we are with a man who is an architect, who is an artist, who is a visionary, and the principal architect of BMA, architect Bobby Mukherji. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thanks for calling me for this.
Pleasure
to be here.
If I start from the very beginning, not from the projects, not from the firm, not from the awards, because there are many actually, but from the young boy who grew up in a family wherein his mother was a model, his father was into theatre. How was life when you were young?
Our family was very, I would say, artistically inclined. It just did not revolve only around theatre and stuff, because in our family we've had many well-known singers, poets, writers, scholars, Sanskrit scholars. So it just did not revolve around theatre and showbiz. So my parents always encouraged me to do something more artistic than pursue subjects that would yield, more money or, that line of work. There are certain business communities to whom those numbers and figures and how to do business and calculation becomes more important. But for us, it was different. And what I also realized is that in my own family, that art manifests itself in the skill of art that you have, manifests itself in many forms. It's not necessarily it has to be a particular type of art. So my talent or skill since childhood was actually drawing and painting. And my mom and dad, they really encouraged me. I see my dad, he used to work and along with that do theatre as well. And life was pretty hard for them. But on so many Sundays, he would take me for these art competitions, so that I could compete, and invariably I did win something. So that really encouraged them to keep sending me, and there were several art competitions throughout the year that I would go participate and win, and that further gave me confidence in following something which was more artistic, which was more visual than theatre. Though they would have preferred me, they would have liked me to do that kind of work, but I was not inclined because it didn't come naturally to me. Painting and drawing came a lot more natural. And I remember, having to read scripts like 35 times to give one, proper take. I used to do a lot of ad films as a child as well, along with my mom. She used to be the model and I used to be the child model in the same ad film. And I used to see the production people having a tough time with me. So I realized that I'm not really cut out for this kind of stuff. I did have a bit of dyslexia, and memorizing scripts was not easy, but to them, they would just read it twice and blur it out on stage for the next 2 hours. They were more into stage theater than just in front of the camera. And I spent a lot of my childhood actually backstage doing my homework and stuff. So it was interesting, and what influenced me in my present work was the sets and the lighting and all that my dad would do, and I used to help him with that, to create all these spaces which are more theatrical and not just normal functional spaces. They are spaces that need to evoke emotions that go along with the theater script or the storyline, and not just a simple backdrop. Lighting played such an important role and is such an integral part of my design work now. And somehow indirectly or directly, all that did influence me, which was a great thing.
So, from a family that deeply loved theatre and showbiz, but then you came from a creative lineage of 600 years or more, right? But then you chose architecture, even though you were good at painting. Why did you not pursue painting as a career?
At hindsight, perhaps I should have. At that time, I didn't have the guts to become just a pure fine artist. Seeing the story of Van Gogh and many others, who died paupers, I didn't get the guts to do that. But at the same time, I really enjoyed designing three-dimensional spaces that, like it started with sets for my dad, and then for my other friends, like another close friend, Alec Padamsi, who was also big into theatre. I used to design his sets too. That also further exposed me to more three-dimensional forms. And it was just not about architecture. I used to love gardening as well. The creating theatrical spaces with amazing lighting, and of course, great architectural forms. I was brought up in Bombay, so since childhood I was exposed to some pretty interesting modern architecture in Bombay, that influenced me. I remember seeing the NCPA theatre where, they would have some shows, and that was a pretty interesting piece of architecture. And the other one was, I think, the Kanchenjunga, which Charles Correa made. And, I found those sculptural forms in those buildings very interesting. And there was art it's just the scale was larger.
Right.
And end of the day, it was a form of art that I sort of got drawn towards. And another big influence was some of my childhood friends I grew up with, who were very well known, who came from very well known developer families, one of the biggest ones in India. And I would see going with them and, seeing construction sites or their hotels coming up, which left a lasting impression on me. So it was a mix of several things that drew me towards this field. And in form of art and painting, it's not like I've stopped doing it. It's that I don't do it commercially, but I do put up my art in some of my own projects. So that way I do keep in touch with my core capability.
Yeah. Right. So you started your firm when you were in second year of your college, right? But that's too early. People generally finish their degree, then they go intern for a while, and then they build something. But you started very early. So was that impatience, or is there something that college did not give you?
No, it's both. It's an interesting question. It's a mix of both. The stuff I was learning in college, I found it to be kind of very basic and was not stimulating enough. And I knew that, whatever I'm learning, I want to immediately put into practice. So, small projects in my neighborhood. Actually, my neighbors had more faith in me that, this kid's going to do something interesting with his life. So it was nice of them that they experimented with me to having done up a small, their home in a village, or it could be someone's kitchen and bathroom or one bedroom. I in my own house, I would design my own I had a garden. I would design a garden, start doing the interiors of my own study room and things like that. So it started early. And I actually landed up getting projects after the second year of my architectural studies. And I dived into it. I did make mistakes, but one thing led to another. And so by the time I finished my fifth grade, we had a full-blown design office, a practice. And coming back to your question about, studies, yes, there was a lack. I also realized that the architectural education, luckily my college was still far better off than the rest in our country. It's the rest of the Indian scene is pretty dismal. But I got lucky because at that time we had some pretty good professionals who would come and lecture and give certain, they would hold seminars or a presentation of their own works. And I was exposed to many of that, being a student, which many other Indian institutions would not expose you to. My principal, Mr. Pradeep Ambedkar, I owe him a big one, because he took me to experience or be part of many such really important presentations that usually more adult architects would attend and get exposure to. So I got exposure to all this at a pretty early age, and I realized that what I was studying was not completely in line with what I'm seeing that these guys the other architects are presenting out there, and they've been so successful at what they do, and I didn't see any of that being fully represented in the education that I was getting. So I realized that I got to teach myself too, and that's what it is. Actually this applies to everyone. That I also realized that some of the world's greatest architects, I think like Le Corbusier, and he was not an architect, and he's one of the world's greatest architects. There was several ones, in Japan, in France, in US. Some of the biggest masters were not really qualified architects with a degree, but they learned. And the same thing happened in the ancient times as well, ancient past. It's not necessarily that all those big monuments and all were all designed by pure architects. They were essentially artists. There was architectural education in those days, but coming back, it's about teaching yourself. The more you learn, the more exposure you get, the more you push yourself towards learning more and putting into practice, the better you get at your work. And that's what I started doing at a very early age, and turned out well.
And you ended up interning at your own firm at the end of the degree, right?
Yeah, that was a very tricky.
That must have been a tricky thing.
Yeah, it was a very tricky situation, and luckily, because of my teachers at the Academy of Architecture and the faith that Principal Ambedkar had in me, I requested him. I remember him telling me that you're asking for a very strange request out here. We've never done this before. But I tell you, why not? The other firms you go in, there are architects working and you learn and they're doing serious projects. But here there are already, 10 architects in the company, and they're doing the same kind of projects. The difference is that I own this company. And so he gave in and he allowed this. It was it's strange, but yeah, it worked out well. And I didn't waste my time. I started further improving my work in the process, and so end of fifth year, also when we passed out, we had a decent sized team, and some of my close friends from my own class also joined in and helped running the company while I lived between India and the US. The company always existed here, and it just grew organically.
There are whole lot of lanes that you could have picked up, right? Residential or maybe institutional, hospitality, and you did some projects in all of the lanes. But hospitality at its core was something that you picked up with all of your faith, right?
Yes.
Why hospitality, but?
That also happened actually by chance. Again, there is a Sahara angle to this as well, because after the completion or in the midway of doing Aamby Valley, it took me around 5 or 6 years to do design work on that project. But in the process, I became close friends with the chairman and the rest of the people in the company, with the senior management. And one of the projects that I picked up was building the infrastructure for the Air Sahara, the airline that they own.
Yeah.
So from first aircraft up to the 27th aircraft, we built up the whole infrastructure, everything to do with design, from the aircraft interiors to the offices to the ticketing counters to the airport lounges. In those days of the airport scene in India was all owned by Airports Authority of India. It was not privatized. Like these really nice, beautiful airports that we have now didn't exist then. So in all those drab buildings, the only bright spot in all these airports was the Air Sahara Lounge, which was an interior project, which I made, for Sahara. And that resulted in so many important people using that lounge. They might be in those days, they had Jet Airways, yeah?
Right.
And Air India, Indian Airlines, and Kingfisher. But the Air Sahara Lounge, irrespective of who's flying, and if they were friends with Chairman Roy, they had access to this lounge, and they would sit there, have the coffee, and they were very beautiful, small, intimate lounges of just around 2,000 square feet or max 3,000 square feet each. But it had a hospitality angle to the whole experience. It was luxurious. It felt like a posh hotel lounge that allowed us to bid. I always say us and not me alone, because me alone I can't be doing all this without my team, who are my biggest supports, with who I can create all this. So that lounge allowed me to bid for some design projects. And the Air Sahara crew would stay at the Le Méridien Hotel in New Delhi. And I was nowhere in the hospitality scene, and this was a really huge project. It was a renovation project which was coming up in those days in 2003 or 4, and it was a 350 crore renovation. Now if you were to multiply it into a present Indian rupees,
figure.
It's probably 3x or 4x.
Right.
And the people doing it were 2 or 3 of the world's largest design firms who were asked to do their mock-up rooms and compete. Again, design competition. And I went and tried. I said, no way, you can't get it. Then I asked my close friend and like my elder brother, the CEO of the airline, Mr. Uttam Kumar Bose, if he could, request, Mr. Tarun Thakral, the CEO of that hotel, if you can allow me to just at least participate. You don't have to give me the project.
Right.
And let him also try. So because of Mr. Bose's connection with Mr. Thakral, and he allowed me to participate. So we got the design brief of the project being designed on the principle or the concept of art and tech.
Okay.
And art and tech as a concept was something very close to my heart. And I love technology, and technology in the form of translated into art or architecture or new age materials and spaces. And the the one who would win the project would have to do a mock-up room designed on this theme. So there were 4 mock-up rooms. So the one who would get the project would be the one who would get the design brief right. We all had to make mock-up rooms. I did what I thought was right. They did what they thought was right. And the Le Méridien brand in those days was a independent hotel design chain, not part of Starwood or Marriott now, which is Le Méridien as a brand is now owned by the Marriott. But in those days, it was an independent hotel chain. And their management would come in from London to choose which is the best design. They did not know which firm designed which room, and they put their finger on my
Your
room.
design, because it was anonymous.
Yeah, and all the rest were all Western, European, and American design firms. We got the brief right.
Right.
So that was my first hotel project, a 350 crore renovation in 2003 or 4. And after the success of that hotel, it catapulted us to a
Holy
big league in the hotel
nice.
scene. And while dealing with the hoteliers, because at the same time I was dealing with other types of clients as well, who would require our services. And I realized that these hoteliers were far more fun people to work with. They came dressed well, they were smelling good, they were in nice boardrooms, polished people, speaking well, getting to eat great food, and compared to a drab construction site and stuff.
Right.
So, it's just that when you enjoy doing something, you get automatically drawn towards doing more of it, and things just lead, one thing to another, and just started expanding in that direction. It's not like we do not do other projects. We do real estate, we do institutional, we do residential, homes, all sorts of projects, but more than 50%, literally 50% of our projects is hospitality.
Right. And yes, you truly said it is more about heightened human experience that you get exposed to when you deal with such people. So when it comes to hotels, in my view particularly, when you design for hotels, you don't know really for what kind of a mass you're designing, right? Because lots and lots of other and unknown people would come and enter that property maybe years after you've finished that. How do you really design that way that you keep in mind that this is the kind of people they're going to enter, and what kind of an image are they going to take back when they move out?
And I'm very sure about, it's not I don't know, I'm pretty much sure about what that space requires. It's because of that all our hotel designs are not similar. It's very, very pluralistic.
Right.
You will see that, in fact, they're greatly distinct. Each one has own distinct personality, because one thing, the location, the end audience and clientele that hotel has to cater to, then there is a brand, and then there is finance, geography, weather, culture of the place. All these things put together decide as to what design language I should take. We've been successful because we wrote the script right.
Right.
Before every project I designed, I literally meditated on the project for a day or two. Like sapno ki duniya mein khwab mein kho jana, and just visualize as to in that location who's gonna come. And invariably we've hit the
Spot
nail
the
on the
right
head.
place,
Yeah,
yes.
most hotels are successful is because of that. We were able to feel the pulse of the market for the location.
Right.
which many foreign or Western design firms, being foreigners, are not able to get it right in our complex culture and society. Our culture is very different from anything else on planet Earth.
Right. It's so diverse.
What works in New York or in Bangkok or in Dubai will not necessarily work in India.
Right.
So being able to feel the pulse was a big thing, and when we wrote the script that touched all the points that would excite that end user, we were talking about, before we started this, we were talking about Dehradun.
Yes.
The last hotel which we opened a year ago in Dehradun is the Taj that we had designed. And what would appeal to a Dune person? And we realized that they're pretty patriotic about their state.
Yes.
Yeah, they're very proud of that. They are from Dehradun, and that culture is different from the rest of dirty India and stuff like that, and
I am pretty proud.
yeah. So we took upon influences of what might be culturally relevant for those people. One, we discovered that the state flower is the Brahma Kamal
Yes.
food, right?
Yes.
Like no other state really has a national or a state flower. They have a very interesting bird as well, a very colorful bird.
Monal.
Yeah, I forgot that name. Yeah, that's the. See, right? Stuff like that. So when you go into the lobby, I realized I studied the petal, because when I started the project, it wasn't in season, but I studied the flower, and one contractor actually got me a located flower from higher up in the mountains. And we dissected the flower, and we saw that there are like 5 or 6 different shapes of petals in one flower. We took that and made them into enlarged models or pieces of each petal, and you walk into the reception lobby, the entire backdrop are the petals of the Brahma Kamal pool, the flower, enlarged versions, At one time, my client and friend, Mr. Juneja, he initially, Bobby, aap kya kar rahe ho sab? These are looking pretty crazy, I said, no, we know. I know that's been approved by the, top Taj management, and they know their business, and so do we. And so he very skeptically, he said that, okay, you do it, but I'm really skeptical about all the crazy things you're doing. And on the ceiling there were these wooden rods hanging, which was our inspiration of the pine forests of Uttarakhand, which you could see through the windows of the hotel.
Right.
It's in the foothills of the Mussoorie Mountains. And as I expected, we touched the right chords, and the hotel opened with a big bang, and it's very successful. Big fat Indian weddings taking place. It's beat all the competition around. And the entire backdrop with those Brahma Kamal flower petals is such a Instagrammable backdrop to the locals that it all worked out very well.
And it catches the attention very quietly, and people connect instantly.
So like this is just one example I gave. There might be a project in Rajasthan where the culture is different, Udaipur to a Jodhpur to a Jaipur to a Jaisalmer. All of them have their own nuances. Even within Rajasthan, there are subcultures, by the way.
Right.
Or within Maharashtra, or in Bombay, or in Calcutta. We've been able to get the pulse right. Hence, our hotels are so successful. And end of the day, I really enjoy doing it, because doing a hotel is not just doing any other architecture or an interior project like a home, office, mall. This is one place where you can really experiment and create a completely new sensory or a surreal experience, where the end user is able to immerse him or herself into that space, and it need not be totally practical.
Right.
It need not be a plain Jane. atmosphere or a safe home or like an office. You do create a surreal dream space. And I realized that the more creative we get with our designs, the more successful it gets. So we're constantly experimenting with new age technologies, new age materials. And it all started with that Méridien project, because in that project we used such new age products, which was an outcome of new age technology, from lighting to LEDs to different kinds of glass to other finishing materials. Everything is unique. Now many of these materials are available in India, but in those days everything was unique. People would touch and see like, what the hell is this? Where do you get this from? How come the light's changing color? They never knew a warm, bright light from the yellowish white can become into a blue or a red. So it was like, magic happening.
And this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That was in
Now,
itself.
now every auto rickshaw will have this blue lights and other stuff happening.
Changing colors.
But we did experiment, because the guys who invented this kind of lighting was a company from San Francisco called Color Kinetics, who came over, supported us in all these crazy, ideas, and we put them into practice. This is just one of the aspects. There are like so many other things. So, it blew people's mind, and we love doing projects where we get this kind of creative freedom to do amazing things.
Right. And I think this attention to detail, this precise sensory experience that you give is what is responsible for not making your design a cookie cutter each time. Because
right. That's the word, cookie cutter. When you go to the US, you see that all hotels more or less look the same,
exactly,
irrespective of the brand. And we don't want to do that. It takes a lot of effort towards not getting sucked into that cookie cutter concept. Sometimes I even get into a bit of conflict with the brands, but the brands sooner or later are sweet enough to say that, no, Bobby, I think you know your business. I think you do what you think is apt for this location. For us, the return on investment is more important than our ego or, certain brand, image that needs to go with the brand. So they allowed us to dilute some of that brand DNA to put up a project that's apt for that location.
Right. You mentioned that attention to detail and that designing is what differentiates you from the Western brands or from the foreign brands, right? But then still we see that whenever any luxury hotel brand announces its project in India, somehow the shortlisting goes to some foreign firms, right? You are one of the very small groups and firms in India who've really broken into that inner circle. So what are we really lacking? I don't understand.
No, it's sad. It's very sad.
It's very sad.
In fact, in the absolute upper upscale or the luxury scene, I think we are the only Indians. Not even a group. There are a group of other designers who are doing probably mid-scale, upscale, but not upper upscale. Nobody. It's very sad. And all these remaining 85% of the projects are taken by Western firms.
Right.
Not just Western, I would say from Singapore. Essentially Western firms who are based out of Singapore. And Thailand is an Asian firm that has also produced good designers, and there's some good design firms there. Dubai has got a lot of international designers who've settled there, who operate design firms out of Dubai. But the sad thing is, in our country, we are still to get there. It's very sad.
So, but is it the education, or is it exposure, or is it we're not selling something right?
The problem lies in us. There's so many factors. The same Indians, when you put them into a fertile environment where they've been given good exposure, good education, they're churning out really good work. because somewhere down the line it is there in our DNA.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, now how do you think all those great monuments from a Khajuraho temple to the Ellora and the Ajanta caves, and in the south, the Brihadeswara temple,
Yes.
or the one in Trivandrum, or the amazing architecture of Hampi. All these amazing stuff was made by the same people.
Right.
We have the same DNA. At that time, India was a very, very developed country. The same reason how when Indians go to the US or in Europe, many of them flourish, right? They come from really small, humble backgrounds, and over there, they go there and become babbar shers. Idhar hamesha wo chua billi rehta tha. He didn't get that opportunity, or even get polished so that he becomes a babbar sher. In those days, in the past, we had universities, we had amazing patrons, we had technology, we had amazing civilization, culture. These patrons were of many types. Of course, the emperors, kings, then the other rich noblemen and businessmen who employed architects, designers, vastu shilpakars,
Right.
towards making all this amazing stuff. They got amazing education in the field of architecture, design, art, craft from some of the best universities in the world. Our version of Harvard, Cambridge, they were all here in India.
Right.
The world came here to study. Like Nalanda, for example. And slowly as we started getting invaded, I think our downfall started 800 years ago. When the invaders came in, they burned down our universities, they burned down, destroyed. They were trying to destroy our education system, the Gurukul system. We had amazing teachers. These teachers were patronized by the king. He did not take any ordinary guru to become the guru of that village or the small town. The best ones were chosen, and they were very well paid by the king.
Right.
They were not desperate to survive like we have in our present day situation. If you see the quality of teachers, nothing to be proud about. Those guys did it out of passion, and they had a patron who took care of them, resulting in education knowledge trickling down to the absolute grassroots level that produced all sorts of skilled people, from a businessman to a mathematician to a doctor to a great farmer to a painter to an architect as well, because each one went to the university and they got further education and they learned their stuff. When all these things started getting destroyed and snatched away, our ways of life was snatched away from us. Our downfall started. Then when the Mughals came in, India didn't stop making great buildings then, but there were no local architects doing it. They were all imported from Iran, from Turkey.
Right.
Our great Taj Mahal wasn't designed by an Indian.
And that's a new knowledge to me, by the way.
Yeah. So, and there was no other new architecture being produced in India. And when the Brits came, that was putting the nail into the coffin. They further saw to it that our whole educational system was destroyed, and that we will follow their ways of education. They came in, of course, they did set up some pretty good institutions, but it was a very one-sided story, and they destroyed what we had and only allowed their system to flourish. But when it came to our design field, there was no university left. So how will great stuff happen? So in the last 800 years, century after century, the need to have a good architect in our society, in our civilization, ceased to exist. There was no need. There were no patrons. With that mental conditioning that goes in improving your art, like, you'll realize suddenly Bengalis are very creative in their art, literature, culture and things, singing.
Right.
In Rajasthan, they're amazing craftsmen in stonework, in woodwork, because they've been doing this for hundreds of years. Same thing in architecture. You have to be systematically doing that through generation after generation before your DNA picks it up, and this skill gets imprinted into your DNA. Why do you think the Italians are so creative in every sphere? They were never invaded. From the Roman times till now, it's the same culture that has been preserved without any influence from the outside world. No one destroyed nothing. They only polished their skill year after year, century after century. Till now, you see all the big design houses, whether it's fashion or it's a car or it's a shoe,
Comes from
or fabrics or architecture, interiors, lighting design, mosaic, painting. Why is Italy so great in doing that? We have the same genes as them. Over there they're getting polished, and here we are not. So now our time is coming up again. We are not very far away from coming back to our golden days. And at the end of your lifetime or my lifetime, or probably a little beyond that, we will be much ahead than from where we are right now. Many people have got polished. They've got the exposure. Many of them are coming back to
India.
Mother India to contribute. I was the first one to come back. Yeah, I didn't stay back. And whatever little good I've done is also thanks to the exposure I got in the West, that I was able to execute and impart in this, in my world, in my society. So that's why, great stuff is not happening, because we are still in that flux period where we're still not matured enough. And these mature civilizations are sending their skilled talent to do our projects. And at the end of the day, the patron in India, that a businessman who wants to make that expensive piece of property, he wants to know that his dollar or rupee is well spent without experimenting. In order to achieve and earn their trust, we have to do our job right.
Right.
To achieve that. And if your, interiors or your hotel starts looking like a not world class and more influenced by a Bollywood film set, they will not spend on you. They'll not put the money on you unless we learn to produce world class design that's internationally acceptable in all forms. So we were lucky that somehow we got there, but I would love for many of my own brothers and sisters in my fraternity to be in that space and not really have outsiders coming in and taking their space.
Actually, that is something even I can see, because earlier we used to look up to most of the brands whenever it comes to even fashion or any other thing. But now we're having homegrown brands coming up in India who are taking up the opportunity, taking up the lead to actually desolate their hidden talents and craftsmanship and artisans to actually into materials. So you talked about monuments, right? Historically, monuments were made because of a function and also out of a purpose. So if I consider 7 wonders of the world and I pick up any 3, for example, if I consider Taj Mahal, it was built out of love, right? Pyramids were made to exceed the belief in eternal life. Or maybe Great Wall of China was meant for protection. But in this world of commercialization and ROIs, do we have really lost that sense of purpose in terms of architecture, or the means are different now?
I can't say that we've completely lost our sense of purpose. It's just that there are very few patrons who realize the value of what we can bring to the table. And if you do your job right, even if it's a commercial project where ROI and all that is important, you can still do a good job. But people are not doing it for various reasons. And to produce that high quality of work, there are several factors. Of course, I was talking about education, exposure, that's one aspect. The other big aspect is finance.
Right.
In order to produce great design, the designer needs to invest a lot of his time and energies towards producing that excellence. Now, if you have to worry about taking care of your family, paying salaries to the people who are helping you in your work, and you're getting peanuts for it, you have to make ends meet in that. And your mathematical calculations towards doing that work is, say, I can't spend more than 3,000 man hours on doing that project to make it economically viable for the small fee that my client has paid me. That's one of the biggest reasons, more than exposure and education, because there's a lot of raw talent also.
Right.
In our country, where you don't necessarily need exposure all the time. These raw talents do not get the opportunity to showcase their art because they are totally bogged down by these earthly realities. And many of the clientele does not realize that. It's our mentality also. You have money to spend 10,000 rupees per square foot on a project, but you do not have 500 rupees to spend on your per square foot on that designer. And you tell him, "Aap jo 40 rupees mein karke do." What do you get?
Ugly,
You'll get peanuts. Simple example, right? The Lucknowi chicken kurta. I often give this as an example to my clients. The same white chicken Lucknowi kurta, you can buy it at 5,000 rupees and you can buy it at 50,000 rupees in the Lucknow market. What is the difference? It's the same fabric, same cotton fabric, it's white in color. What is the difference? Batao?
Obviously, it's the craftsmanship.
It's the karigari.
It's the karigari, it's the originality.
That Raj Karigar, on this 5001, he spent around 10 minutes or 20 minutes. On the 50,001, he spent 1 week doing it.
Right.
Doing that intricate work. He got compensated for his efforts. Now you tell that Karigar, I'm going to pay you only 5,000 bucks, but do it. This is what he'll produce. His hands are tied. So even when there are great artists, creators who can do great stuff, they're not allowed to showcase their creative skills. And unless this mindset is changed, and even architects, they refuse to work in such frugal fees being thrown at them, our built-up environment is going to look as mediocre as it is right now. The Council of Architects, they have put some cap on how much fee we should take. It's far more that recommended fee structure by the Council of Architects, but people are so desperate to survive that they're willing to work at 1/10 what his real worth is. And that's what you get. We don't do that. We are not cheap. And jisko qadar hai, people who understand what we bring to the table, they come to us. They realize the value of what we bring to the table. Hence, we got a certain kind of clientele who understand what goes into making a quality product. And there are quite a few of them in our country, but it's not as many as it should be to make our profession flourish. All this happened in the past. We had amazing stuff. You don't see the ancient houses, they were all destroyed because they were made of wood or bricks in the ancient time. They were all broken down through time and all. But I'm sure the houses were beautiful in those days too. Not just these monuments that the kings produced, which were, mainly temples or Buddhist places of worship. You were there because it was a flourishing trade with very evolved society, like it is there in the Western world. Like I can tell because in Milan or even New York or some places where there are locals who are driving taxis and stuff, right? When they drive through the city, they'll tell you the name of, this building was designed by Renzo Piano, this was designed by, Zaha Hadid, or this was designed by some other person. They know. Everyone knows about what is great art, what's great architecture, is part. And some of their Western clients that we have, when we sit with them for meetings, and they're talking about, it gets stressful for us many a times, by the way, because they already know so much that they ask you so many technical questions that which you need to reply, and some of the suggestions they give are also very valid. So that's all part of conditioning and the culture you came from, where everyone's got that level of, evolution in their design thinking. It's completely soaked down to the grassroots levels. We still have a long way to go and get back into what we were in the past. We were that. So this, as I kept telling you, those several hundred years that we have lost, we are now finally getting it back. But this is just the beginning. 800 years of loss, and with just this, less than 100 years of freedom and living our life the way we want to, is going to take a while.
That is a whole new perspective to what I really asked, and I appreciate, because I could not think into that, that dimension particularly. So, sir, when we talk about the kind of designs or the kind of civilizations we had before, we had Jalis, we had Jharokhas, we had Baudis. So, Indian people have had that architectural intelligence right before anybody else, and even in terms of sustainability. And now when I talk about sustainability, today sustainability is a buzzword. Everybody wants green buildings, everybody wants LEED certifications. But from where you sit, is sustainability really a conscious choice of people, or is it's just a checkbox?
In many environments, it is a conscious decision. In our environment, it's because they get some brownie points for being green. But the great thing I'm seeing in our environment now is that the new generation, not the older ones, they are very sensitive about this. They are really concerned about their future and their children's future.
Right.
And that's the same in a more heightened sense in the developed world, because they've been doing it for already last few decades. In our environment, where people are really thinking strongly in that direction, it's just been 10-15 years. And we're getting there, but in general, in wanting to be green and all that stuff, right, it's more of just, checking one of those boxes where you've done good for yourself, for your project, and you got a green certification, or not because you greatly feel passionate about it. And one of the other things that goes against us in going green is because it's proved to be more expensive to make a green building than a regular conventional,
Building.
technology building. So unless it becomes more economically attractive, producing a green building will not be so popular. So the only green projects that we are doing is where we have a client who truly believes in this, and that's far too less. And it's invariably a far more younger clientele who appreciates this. And when it comes to hospitality, I am seeing now that those brands have not really come to India, but in the big western cities, some of these truly green, eco-friendly hotel brands, they are able to command even a bigger premium than the most expensive, top-notch, luxury, super luxury hotel brands. Because their followers, their clientele, they will purposely spend on keeping this brand alive and feeling good about being in that space where everything has been thoughtfully worked on. So it also does make business sense. But you need to find a clientele who's willing to put those big bucks into making that.
Sir,
It's still not come here, at least in the hospitality field, it's not come.
so if I look at the global perspective of this, people in Europe are moving away from UPVC because we come from a window brand.
Right.
People are moving away from UPVC because of the recycling issues. They're choosing aluminum as a smarter choice. And in line of that, TOSTEM has launched a material, it's called Premel R100. It is made up of 100% recycled aluminum. And when I talk about carbon emissions, it is 50-50. So it is 50% which comes from making the building, which is embodied carbon, and 50% which comes from the effectiveness of that building, right? So TOSTEM on its part is helping to cut down the embodied carbon by 80% by the use of this material. And definitely, if I look at, we launched this material like 6 months back, but we've secured some great projects because yes, people are consciously thinking of that today. And then they think of it from 360 degree, that they're thinking of rainwater harvesting and everything. And then they come down to choosing Premel R100 windows. So my question to you was that, having that responsible material and market, do you think this is going to change the way people think?
There yet. It's far from there. But that hotel brand I was talking about, a sensitive one from the West, he will put it because the clientele is spending $500-600 a night for that room. You know?
We can see that coming to India.
That's 50,000 rupees a night. And every product that he has sourced is truly natural in all respects. It's truly green. The cost of making his hotel was far more. So, when you're making this product and selling it in certain environments, it'll do very well. It'll do well with those evolved commercial clients who's putting up their own house or their own head office. When it comes to hotel, unless the hotel is marketed to being that really special green hotel, will this work? And for that, you need people with guts to put in the money into doing a product like that. It's not too far away because the new generation is aware of it.
Right.
We're just waiting for a little more time till they have power in their hands.
Money in their hands.
Yeah, and they will do it.
So, we talk about luxury a lot these days. These people, they want to experience luxury. But there is a definition of luxury to everybody specifically. What is luxury to you?
Luxury is actually not about just spending on luxurious materials or expensive materials, not that. Luxury is about, again, touching the right chords by which you feel great about being in that immersive space, whether it's a home or an office or a hotel or a restaurant. There are so many places you go, walk into it, and you don't know why you feel so good about that space. There's so many other aspects. It's to do with lighting, it's to do with how sunlight comes in, it's the volume of the space, it's the way you sleep and how much comfort. in pin drop silence, in the way you bathed the next morning, the way you showered, the way the water fell on you, the food you ate the next day at breakfast or the lunch, where it was thoughtfully worked out, where the ingredients and stuff in the food is actually good for your health and stomach and your system. And all this is not really putting in fancy Italian marble or some gold or a big chandelier or something. It's not important. And it's the way you put things together that gives you a very elevated feel in the time you spend in that building or architecture or interior space. That is luxury.
And what about responsible luxury?
And that's, as I told you, is getting more and more elevated. More and more of the new generation are getting sensitive to that, and they're paying for it as well. So it's becoming slowly viable. So when we are building in some of the exotic environments, in really nice geographic conditions, like in the middle of Maldives, in the middle of the ocean, or in Seychelles, or in Kashmir, or some other place in the Himalayas, or in the middle of the desert, we are creating great experiences using really ecologically carefully selected materials, finishes, designs, which will not harm the ecology of that place, which invariably land us in spending more, because the ownership is also sensitive to that. And also realizing that the end clientele or the audience who will come there is sensitive about that. And all this is happening, tried and tested worldwide. So we are doing responsible luxury, and that is responsible luxury. It's not necessarily, again, no Italian marble and chandeliers and all that, and using materials which have been sourced with the least amount of carbon footprint, or things which are completely natural, things which have not consumed so much of energy to produce it. And when we build using those technologies, many of them are actually from the past. I remember one of your questions earlier, you mentioned that from the past, they created the Boweries and palaces and certain plasters and thick walls. They were far more sensitive about all that. And when we go back to using those traditional techniques in construction, you invariably land up having a far more natural environment, which is greatly appreciated by the people. So we're doing good out there.
So you've used TOSTEM in some of your projects, and out of one which I can recall is the Lakshmi Raj Vilas in Boregaon. So you've used TOSTEM there. What sort of an experience you've had, and what innovations did TOSTEM provide you?
It's a very successful project. The building it's a tower, but it looks Rajasthani. It has jali, jharokas, it has arches, colors of Rajasthan, but when it came to your bit, the windows, instead of having jalis in front of the window, and also my client, he also had an important role to play, that he did want to experiment with some of our thoughts. And we had done this in a smaller way in some other projects, but not in a whole building, where between the glass panels we put in these aluminum louvers that can be opened, closed, angles turned, and it's sandwiched between your glass system, which is a pretty cool thing to do. No one's done this, I think, in the whole country. And because of this glazing system, you don't really need curtains in the house. You can completely cut off sunlight by using these magnetic control mechanism that allows the louvers to move up and down, fully open, bring it down, as well as change the angle of the louvers. So that was used in the whole building, and I think, yeah, it was pretty good that you could pull it when no other could do that. So that's good support from you guys.
Thank you so much, sir. So one thing came to my mind. We talked about exposure a lot. So earlier, exposure meant a plane ticket. You have to fly somewhere and you have to personally experience that place and get gist of it and come back, implement it. But in today's time, even a 21-year-old sitting at his or her house can Google it or maybe go through BMA's Instagram page and get visual access to that, right? Is it going to change how architecture is being perceived and being taken up as a part of education, or the physical touch and feel is still going to play an important role?
How much ever you see images, yes. If you don't have the means, that's a good enough inspiration. Like me, when I was small, I was not exposed to so much of the developed world. But after my education, when I went to the West, I realized that I had to unlearn
Certain
everything that I learned in my education. That happens only after you physically soak yourself into the environment. You have to touch, smell, feel, be in that space, you understanding details, how things work, how light enters, the texture, the finishes, the weather also inside that environment, acoustics, the lighting technologies. Now all these things, when you immerse yourself into that wonderful space, you will, no amount of film, pictures, Instagram, books will give you that till you actually immerse yourself. So my advice to the young generation or the new architects that are coming is that do whatever it takes. Please go out there, explore the world, see the best monuments, architecture, commercial buildings, hotels that the world has to offer. It'll change your perspective about design, and it goes a very long way in polishing your profession. You learn more through seeing than any bookish knowledge or any gyan or anything that the teacher will give you than you experiencing it yourself.
So can you name any 3 buildings that you've personally experienced and you went humbled when you saw them and you'd want people to recommend?
Some of them have been from our own Indian, from distant past. I love the state of Rajasthan. The whole environment it's a real, I mean, to me, when the first time I went there, it was like a fairy tale land, like Aladdin, the magic carpet, that kind of an environment where the architecture, the desert landscape, the trees, the music, the clothing of the people, and the palaces which were built on the mountains, palaces in the middle of lakes, all that left a huge impression on me. And I think within your own country, you should go out to experience all that. That's one. A second one that greatly impressed me was the Ajanta and Ellora. Ajanta caves and the Ellora Kailash temple, the way it was constructed from a single piece of rock from top to bottom, and the kind of precision, engineering and drawings that they might have had more than 2,000-3,000 years ago to build that is mind-boggling. We just take it for granted that all this is there in our surroundings. The other thing like Taj Mahal is hardly 600-700 years old, but these are thousands of years old. And to see the paintings inside those caves on all the way the whole thing was carved, and it's pretty mind-boggling what they did. The other are the step wells of India. In Gujarat, when you go down in there and you see that, architecture going reverse, people go up, this is going
down.
reverse down, and still amazing experience in that subterranean architecture is mind-boggling. This is within India. Internationally, I think one should visit Manhattan, New York. It will completely change your idea as an architect of idea of scale and how things function as a complex mechanism, organism, the whole city, the way it works, above ground, below ground, up in the clouds, at mid level, at road level. It's there's lots to learn in that environment. Another great living environment where the living conditions and planning all is very nice is Los Angeles. It's a very, very well planned environment. So yeah, these things blew my mind, and somehow it shows up. The influence, it shows up in our work as well.
So you've talked about your dream projects. 3 of them. One was a city, one was a hotel, and third you've kept private somehow.
I'll still keep it private.
Still, if we could get a hint.
I've done a lot in my profession. There are certain things I have not built or designed yet, but those kind of projects are being executed. We're halfway there. It'll take some time before I open it to the public, but I just don't want to cloud it with excessive expectations, or
I get it.
you'll be here. Just seeing is believing after it gets built. So
Right.
I don't want to count the eggs before they hatch.
Right. And this journey of you and people at BMA has turned 34 years now.
Yes.
Which is an incredible period of time that you've covered. You've given marvelous buildings and hotels to this country and across the globe actually. So when you walk into one of your projects that you did years back, as a normal visitor, what do you look for?
I don't go back. Once I'm done with the project, I very, very seldom go back. It's just that it's like I've had my fill or overdose of making that, and I want to go and do the next, conquest in design. But sometimes I do land up going into in case probably it's a residential building, some friend happens to be staying there, or there is another hotel where a convention or a conference is taking place in one of our properties. Somewhere there's a wedding happening, so you back to one of our resorts for a big fat Indian wedding. When I go back, yes, it does get a bit nostalgic, and I think about all the
Elements you must have thought of.
that seeing it live in action and all the difficulties and challenges we faced while executing that project. And I'm very curious to know as to how the people reacted through all these years, people who've used our spaces, who've inhabited our spaces. And I asked the staff around, and when they pay a lot of compliments and stuff it makes you very proud. I recently walked into that first Méridien project after a decade, and I walked in, and then I saw that some of the staff recognized me. I thought in those years all staff would have gone. They recognized me, from the doorman to the lobby manager to everyone, and everyone came to meet, including the CEO, and we spoke, and they spoke that you can't imagine the number of people that come and ask who created this, and the number of people who take photographs and filming, taking selfies of everything, all the fun things they see there, that even after 2 decades, it's still very relevant and before time.
Right.
And then it makes you feel very great. So I keep, more than anything else, I pick the brains of the staff there as to how people are reacting to the space, just to get the feedback.
So 34 years of making such remarkable projects. Thank you for spending this hour with us, and we are extremely honored to have you on InDesign Dialogue with TOSTEM. Thank you so much for joining. This has been InDesign Dialogue with TOSTEM. I am Ayushi. Today, we sat with architect Bobby Mukherji, who spent 34 years of his life proving that good architecture is not about what you build, but it is about how it makes the people feel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.